friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about how to make that perfectly straight seam. Now a seam can either make or break your entire outfit, and so learning how to make a perfectly straight seam is one of the essential sewing skills that you can learn. This year, as we have a lot of new faces joining our sewing community, I thought this is really good topic to talk about. First, why is it so important to do a perfectly straight seam? For the inner of the garment, it is really important because if you do not make a straight seam, then the entire garment will not fall correctly on your figure and you will have a really hard time ironing those seams open. And for the outside of the garment, if you're making, let's say, a top stitching and you're not doing a straight seam, then again it will be visible and the garment will not look as good as it could. Now this video will consist of 2 exercises and 1 homework for you to do at home with some extra tips. And I would say it will take you about 20 minutes up to an hour to complete those both exercises, but do take your time, make them at your own pace and only switch to another exercise when you feel comfortable with the previous one. So for the first exercise, I want you to take a few blank sheets of paper and de-thread your sewing machine, meaning take out your thread and take out your bobbin thread because we will not be needing them at this particular exercise. And why we are choosing a blank piece of paper instead of fabric? Because we are doing the first exercise and we want to have a very controlled environment, and paper does not stretch out such as fabric, it does not fray, so it will be really good for you to have that controlled environment and learn the basic movements, learn how to sew the straight stitch in the very controlled environment. Now, let's switch to the sewing machine. Now, for first part of this exercise, I want you to take a blank sheet of paper and using a pencil and a ruler, just make a lot of straight lines on it. Once you've done it, I want you to take this piece of paper and put it beneath your needle, just so that the straight line is going exactly through this middle space. So usually you would look at your needle and the way it's doing the seam. However, I want you to focus on this specific place and see if the line you draw with the pencil goes through it. And then using a really slow motion, I want you to start sewing. Every time you are doing a stitch, make sure you're looking at this place and making sure that this drawn line is going exactly through the middle of it. Do not rush, take your own pace. Don't worry if you're sewing slowly, because with the practice your pace will start to pick up, and this is really not a place you need to rush. This is how the pierced line looks like, and then continue to do the same with all the other lines until you feel comfortable and until you really feel that you can move to another part of the exercise. See how beautifully it looks pierced, and on the other side you can see how perfectly these straight stitches are turning out. Once you feel comfortable with this part of the exercise, I want you to pick a blank piece of paper and start another part of this exercise. Now for second part of this exercise, take a blank piece of paper and we will doing a little bit more difficult challenge this time. We will not be making lines, but instead you will be following the lines with your eyes. So let's say we want to make a 1 centimeter wide seam. Here on the plate there is a 10 millimeter mark, 1 centimeter, and we will be making sure that our paper is always going at that 1 centimeter mark. Again, we are not using thread, just a piece of paper, and that's it. And again, let's start slowly and start sewing. And I want your entire focus to go to this spot, making sure that the edge of the paper is going exactly through that 10 millimeter mark on this plate. So here all the piercings are exactly 1 centimeter away from the edge. Now for the second row, I want you to pick up the needle, of course, and place the foot so that it goes exactly at the edge of the pierced line. Again, I want your eyes to be focused here so that the edge of the foot goes exactly along the line of the pierced paper. Slowly and in control, always remember that. Here is how our second line is turning out. Straight and all identically at the same. Now repeat this particular place until you feel comfortable and until you feel that all your straight stitches are turning out as straight seams. Make as many lines as you wish, and when you feel comfortable moving to the other exercise, let's do that. So now that you practice on a piece of paper in a very controlled environment, it's time to move to our second exercise, and I want you to take 2 identical pieces of fabric and we will be joining them together with a straight seam. Now, before starting this exercise, I want you to do 2 things. First, I want you to make sure that those 2 pieces of fabric are perfectly ironed and are not wrinkled. And secondly, I want you to make sure that the edges of the fabric are all cut equally and cut straight. Now for the future, remember these 2 advices as well, because if you are making a garment and you want to make sure that you are making a perfectly straight stitch, make sure that the fabric you're working with is really well ironed and also all the edges are trimmed straight and neatly. So prepare your pieces of fabric, thread your sewing machine, preferably with a contrasting thread, and let's move to the sewing machine. So now you can see that I threaded my sewing machine, I put the bobbin thread in, and I also have pinned together those 2 fabric pieces that we will be stitching together, making the perfectly straight seam. And again, as in first exercise, we will be putting the fabric here, making sure that the edge goes exactly at 10 millimeter mark. And then slowly we will start sewing. Always be focusing on this spot so that your edge goes exactly at 10 millimeter mark. Take out the pins along the way. And at the end of the seam, just lift the foot and trim Now for the second row, place the fabric so that the edge of the foot touches the first seam. Again, exactly the same way as we did in the first exercise using the paper. And then start sewing again, making sure that your edge of the foot goes close to this line. And the result is beautifully straight lines, each separated exactly at the same width as another one, and then continue to do another lines just like that one until you feel comfortable and until you really feel that you learned how to make those perfectly straight seams. So after completing these two exercises, you will have a pretty good idea on how to make a perfectly straight seam, and I want you to put those skills instantly to practice, because the more you practice, the better the perfect straight seam will turn out. So I am giving you a little bit of a homework to choose a project and make it happen using the techniques that you learned today. Now I know some people advise you to choose a really simple project like a pillowcase or a blanket or whatever, but I personally advise you to choose a project that you will be really passionate about and you will be really focused to make sure that you are doing a good job and really perfecting those straight seams. For example, when I was learning to sew, my first garment that I did top stitching on was this jacket, and I really wanted to wear it, so I was really focused on making really straight seams, and it turned out really good. It was not perfect, but it was really good, and I was really proud of myself, and it was kind of a breaking point in entire sewing career. So my advice number one, choose a project that you will be really passionate about and start making it using the techniques that you learned in this video. And our second tip for your homework is to get this little fella. Now this is a magnet seam navigator that will help you guide your fabric and really make the perfect seam. It's a little bit of a cheat item, but it's really helpful, and I always keep one on my sewing machine because sometimes it just comes in handy. This really costs like $1 or $2, but it will last you a lifetime because there is no way this one can break, and I want to show you how to use it. So let's switch again to the sewing machine. So to use this magnetic navigator, put it on the metal plate over here, and depending on the seam width that you will be making, place it exactly on that spot. For example, if I will be making, let's say, 1.5 centimeters with seams, then I will put it here, and I will make sure that one of the straight edges is going exactly the same line as my foot and exactly at 1.5 centimeter mark, because this is the mark that my seam allowance is. Now I will take my piece of fabric, put it here, making sure that the edge of the fabric is touching this part, and I am focusing here on this specific part, making sure that my fabric does not go over like this and does not go over like this, but it goes exactly here on this seam navigator. And then I start sewing. And here is the result. Again, perfectly straight seam. These little helpers are really come in handy, and I highly recommend you getting one and always keeping somewhere close to your sewing machine. So this is it what I wanted to show you today, and hope you learned something new. Now, if any part of the video was unclear, please write a comment down below and I will answer it and explain it. And if you try any of these tips, I would love to see the results, so please send me a message via Instagram. I will link it down below because I really would love to see your work. Thank you for watching this video and I'm wishing you a wonderful day ahead. Bye!